just for the purpose of revisiting what we've discussed so far as the class began, we are going to be working through the marking rubrics for questions 1 and 2. So questions 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and then 2. And we're also starting our discussion today of question 3, hit a niche. And we were just busy talking about hit and niche now. So before we say that, just for the record, for the students who are unable to attend class and want to go and watch this video. Okay, so the two biggest questions that you need to focus on in terms of marks, because they count literally almost half of the marks, are questions 1.2 for 25 marks and question 2 for 20 marks. So question 1.2 has got to do with value chains and business models, and question 2, which has to do with inertia and companies not taking advantage of new technologies, which we discussed in quite a lot of depth last week. So we're going to go over that again today. But before we do that, we just want to get our feet wet with question 3. So I'm going to read question 3 again, so we have it on the record, and then we can move from there. So question 3, the hidden niche. But guys, this is only for 10 marks. So what I wanted to say to you guys is it's important to focus on this question, obviously, because 10 marks is 10 marks, but it is not where you should spend most of your time. The other thing that I wanted to say to you is we've made a decision now. I had a chat with Chris earlier today that this is just going to be you guys presenting a PowerPoint presentation. If you've already done work around finding academic sources, you're welcome to include those. That will give you extra marks. Excuse me. But if you haven't done sources yet, all you need to do is present a PowerPoint presentation. I would say just include Kung so we can understand what it is that you understand by a hit or a niche. But that can be very easily explained in terms of your assignment, okay, in terms of your presentation. Okay, so let me read the question. For 10 marks, hit niche. As a media manager, you are given the opportunity to present to the management team of a startup business regarding hits, blockbusters, and niche media products. The business is in the startup phase and has to allocate funds very sparingly. Which strategy would you recommend to them, hit or niche products? In a PowerPoint presentation, address the following for 10 marks. Why would one follow a hit or blockbuster strategy? Why would one follow a niche product strategy? Provide examples from different products. And then what do you recommend to the management team and why? And then we spoke about the blockbuster strategy, and Onelena specifically mentioned blockbuster, something that Hollywood usually does. They release a big movie over the summer, like a Star Wars, etc., or a, Lord of the Rings kind of vibe. But nowadays, those are hits. Back when they first started, Star Wars is very much a niche product. It was a small little market that eventually grew into something huge. But that's why Disney bought it over. When it first started, it was certainly not what it is today. So it was very much a niche product, and it was a chance. They just took a chance and then decided to see if it was going to work. It could just as easily have failed. If you look at an example, and these are all old movies, long before you guys even remember, but there was a movie back in the 1980s, I think it was even in 1980, called Escape from New York, with a very young Kurt Russell in it, about the American president. New York's become Manhattan specifically has become a prison, and the president of the United States actually crashes into this prison and they capture him, and this guy's got to go in and go and find the president. And it was done by a guy called John Carpenter, who is very much on the fringes and very much niche, and he then became very popular. And this is, of course, was a very well-known movie. It's developed a cult following. I don't know that it's necessarily a massive blockbuster, but it certainly has developed a cult following. It's got a life of its own. Another example just linked to that, very interesting in terms of niche, that then became accidentally hit. It's still a bit niche today, but back in the 1970s, when Richard Branson was involved in the music industry, if you read his book Screw It, Let's Do It. It's a very good book. You guys should get a copy and read it. It's a short read. You'll be able to finish it in a day. It's very short to read. Excuse me. Anyway, Richard Branson speaks about Mike Oldfield. So Mike Oldfield is a British artist who did an album called Tubular Bells, which is mostly with bells. So it was a very unusual album, bit of a pop, classic vibe, kind of crossover. Anyway, so Richard Branson had signed Mike Oldfield to his record label, Virgin Music, and was looking to shop Mike Oldfield as an artist to bigger labels that had better distribution. So he went and had a meeting with Ahmet Ertegun, who was a Turkish guy who had moved to America, was born there. I think he moved to America though, and became a record label exec, similar to Clive Davis, who discovered Alicia Keys. And Richard Branson had this meeting with him and said, listen, how can we take this Tubular Bells thing and turn it into something substantial? Anyway, what they decided to do with the blessing of Ahmet Ertegun is use Tubular Bells, the song, as the title theme for a movie called, what the hell was it called now? The Exorcist. Okay, which is about, obviously, you know, exorcising demons and spirits using a priest from somebody who's possessed. Anyway, the movie also developed a cult following, and the song Tubular Bells from this movie became a massive hit for Mike Oldfield, who hated the public attention. He just wanted to make music. And he basically said to Richard Branson, don't you ever do that to me again. And he's never really become a mainstream artist, but he's had these very big successes with these musical things because of the fact that they managed to pair it in certain ways. So you can see that is the crossover between hit and niche. And that is what we were talking about when I spoke earlier on about a sleeper hit over the summer. So a good example of that would be Nia Vardalos in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. That was produced by Tom Hanks. He saw her performing in a one-woman show in Chicago about her family being Greek. Thought it was a great idea, decided to turn it into a movie called My Big Fat Greek Wedding, became this massive hit over the summer, and was not pegged to become a huge hit. It was just a nice, feel-good movie that did very well. But there are lots of examples. But initially, guys, a hit or blockbuster strategy requires you to have an understanding that the market is going to respond to it. And we can only know that based on past experience. And even so, it's not necessarily going to be a hit. I gave you the example, I think, last week when we were doing this class. Okay. As you guys, I'm sure you've heard of Tina Turner. Tina Turner did a song called River Deep Mountain High. She worked on that song with Ike Turner. It was written by a guy called Phil Spector, who's now in jail because he was accused of murdering his wife, I think. Anyway, Phil Spector was a very big producer in the 1960s who came up with a concept called Wall of Sound, or was involved with originated a concept called Wall of Sound that ABBA then used in their music as well to create their big vocal harmonies and big productions. And he wrote the song called River Deep Mountain High, which Tina Turner recorded with Ike Turner. And it had all the elements and all the makings of blockbuster/hit. I mean, it was Ike and Tina Turner who were already big back then. Phil Spector was a very well-known and well-respected producer who'd had previous hits and knew everybody in the music industry, had connections in radio, etc., 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 and recorded in a beautiful studio in Los Angeles, one of the best studios that was available at the time. And it had all the elements of hit. And it just never, ever became a huge hit for Tina Turner. It was a slow burner. It's still popular today. As you guys know, Celine Dion did a remake of it, I think in the late 1990s, which became a bigger hit for her, I think, or partial hit. But you'll often find out that hits are notoriously unpredictable. That's why we call them hits, because you don't know if you're going to hit the target. That's why we call them hits or blockbusters. So in order for something to be a blockbuster, you need to know that it's going to be popular with the public. So today we know because of past experience, because we've had all these movies that have been released over time, and it's built up something that we've discussed a lot in this class, legacy. Because of that, what we find is that we have these legacy shows, these legacy movies, or these legacy TV series that have built up so much of a cult following, so much of a following, have become popular over time, that they have the ability to get people into a cinema to go and watch a movie, or to a concert, or to a YouTube channel, or to whatever it's going to be. So that is all stuff that's very important to consider when you're looking at this over here. Okay, so then in terms of niches, what we were discussing earlier on, we said what exactly defines a niche, and we were looking at some of the variables that we can use to break down a market into smaller target segments that could then double as niche. And what we started speaking about was the first element that we used to break down markets, and we're talking about geography. And then I asked for an explanation, and unfortunately, I don't think that the connections are all that great today, so people are battling to speak. But anyway, so Onelena, I wanted to ask you, Didi, you're welcome to chime in at any time. Bonolo, you as well, put up your hand, or you can simply just unmute yourself and just contribute to the class. What I wanted to ask you is, Onelena, what other variables do we use aside from geography to break up a market into potential smaller chunks, which we can call then targeted pieces or niches? What would you say?
Can we say probably like psychographics?
Absolutely. Psychographics is a very good one. Can you give me an example of psychographics?
So I don't know, I can think of an example. Is that fine?
Yes, of course. Absolutely.
Okay, so maybe we can say with, I forgot what they're called, but with people, with young people, but not Gen Z. Think after Gen Z. Between maybe the ages of 25, 35, they're more into podcasts, right?
Okay, yes, yes.
So I just don't know how to explain it, but I think I don't know how to explain it, Rob.
No, that's fine. Onelena, you're doing very well. Let me help you there. Bonolo, I'm coming back to you, Onelena. Bonolo, do you have something that you wanted to add? So your hand is up. Bonolo, do you want to add something?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Oh, so segmentation. I don't know how to.
Sorry, say that again.
Behavior. So,
Bonolo, you are breaking up a little bit. You want to type something in the chat box?
let me just type.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So I don't see the. It doesn't give me the option to type. But I was saying.
Okay, well, your microphone's coming through now. Do you want to just speak a little bit louder, please, and then just tell me what you wanted to say, please?
So I was saying.
Sorry, but no, break up. Let me open the chat box over here. You should be able to pick it up. Let me just open it. Over here. Okay. I just typed your message. So hopefully that opens the chat for you. Should be able to see it. If you're working on your phone, you might not be able to. But try if you can type a message. Otherwise, what you can do is you can send me a message via WhatsApp if you want. That's fine. You can use WhatsApp. Okay. All right. So Onelena, getting back to you. And thank you, Bonolo. Thank you, Didi, for your contributions. Okay. getting back to you, Onlena. So remember in class you actually mentioned values and lifestyles. Okay, but you can argue that in terms of psychographics, culture is a very big indicator of what is going to become niche or what is not going to become niche. Okay, and let's look at an example. Let's look at South Africa's biggest ever musical export hit in terms of YouTube views, 500 million views on YouTube, Jerusalema. So it's in Zulu, okay, and it's very much a South African thing. But if you have a look, why did we have Austrian flight attendants and pilots doing the Jerusalema dance if it was niche? What was it about that? And if you guys know the backstory behind Jerusalem, I know some of you guys are like, oh, Rob, that's so old and so boring. But if you know the backstory behind it, Onlena, do you know anything about it? Do you want to give me an indication of how that was culturally specific, niche, that then managed to become a hit? Do you know anything about it? Or Didi or Bonola, do you guys know anything about it? Do you want to share with me? Onlena, do you want to share with me?
Rob.
Yes, Didi?
I'm going to have a take. I'm not really sure, but would it can we say that it was based on gangsterism and also the background of why people became who they were within the gangs that they were a part of?
Yes, yes, you could. Can you elaborate and give me more details, please? Can you give me more information?
Ooh. I don't really remember Jerusalema that well, but oh, yeah, no, it's been a while.
You know, sometimes there is just like, for example, if you look at, I mean, I can only speak for, you know, obviously because I'm white, and I can speak for my culture. So if you play Ngalakata at a white party, most of the white people will get up and dance because it's very catchy. You know, some people, they even change the words to take a laptop, you know, hey, take a laptop, hey, take a laptop, you know. So that is just all. Like, for example, if you play Achy Breaky Heart, especially if it's a slightly older crowd. So Achy Breaky Heart was something that was, you know, made popular by obviously Billy Ray Cyrus 30 years ago now. Or even like the Macarena. Most of the time it's because it's linked to a dance, not always. So in terms of Jerusalema or Ngalakata, just because, you know, it was played across all the airwaves on various radio stations, and back in those days it was played on radio stations that were focused a lot on certain targeted niches like the white market. Okay, and it's become very popular among them. The other songs as well, like Pata Pata by Miriam Makeba, which is very old, you know, and a couple of other songs. But if you have a look, a lot of it has to do with it's something that just crossed boundaries, crossed borders. Johnny Clegg was very popular because he crossed boundaries, he crossed borders. So that's why there. In terms of Jerusalem, I think what really pushed it over the edge, and it's the same thing with Achy Breaky Heart, was the dance. So as I understand it, there was a group of, I think it was Angolan kids or young guys, and I think they might have been gang affiliated. I'm not sure. That's what you're talking, Didi, about the whole gang thing. Okay, so these guys came in, and they sort of created this little bit of a dance that then got taken into sort of, it became slightly more popular, went a bit viral, and then I don't know who formalized the dance. I just know there's certain steps and certain moves, and if you go to a party, if you go, you know, for example, now if you go to especially a whole lot of white people at a party, they'll all get up and sort of try and do sort of half the dance. And if there's some black people there, they'll also get up and sort of help, and that's the whole thing. So it's kind of like it has the ability to cross boundaries. And then of course it became the Jerusalem Dance Challenge, which was linked to the whole COVID-19 thing. People couldn't get out. So they said, let's connect with each other on social media. Let's have some fun. Let's get, everybody inspired to still be connected, even though we can't see each other, we can't be close to each other because we're making each other sick. So all of those factors that came together, and it's a confluence of factors that you can never really predict. You can try to make it come together, but the problem with a hit strategy is that it's very unpredictable. It may very well be, if it has some legacy attached to it, if it has reputation attached to it, if there's a brand in place, like Star Wars is a brand, then you can probably extend that life of that, the shelf life of that product or service or idea, to do another movie or do another show or do another whatever it is, and that will probably become popular. Another example is Star Trek, which started as a TV show that then became, a couple of movies with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy and so on and so forth. And most of those actors are now passed away, but you've had remakes and offshoots and spin-offs and so on and so forth. It's just all taken on a life of its own. And that is an example of how you create your blockbuster strategy. Same thing with another example is Law and Order. We had Law and Order, the normal one, Law and Order UK, Law and Order Los Angeles, Law and Order Special Victims Unit, Law and Order Organized Crime, Law and Order Trial by Jury, and what's the other one? Law and Order Criminal Intent. So those are all spin-off products of the original one, and it's been going for like 30 years. Okay, so other examples. Okay, Bonolo, Harry Potter was a niche that turned to blockbusters. Yes, absolutely, I agree with you, Bonolo. Harry Potter was niche. They didn't expect it to become very big. By the time it got to movies, though, it probably was big. I don't think J.K. Rowling expected it to become so huge. And then, of course, they pulled in all these big stars, and it definitely became bigger. So the movie was already, the book was niche. The movie was already mainstream. Same thing with Lord of the Rings. I mean, J.R.R. Tolkien, by the time they got to the movies, although I think the movies were much bigger than they thought they would ever be, but they had big actors in it. But that's not always an indicator. Sometimes you have big actors starring in a big budget film with a big producer, and it's a flop. It doesn't necessarily always take off. And there are examples of that over there as well. So, guys, when you're doing this answer over here, you need to provide some backing on why you would follow a hit or blockbuster strategy. So use your Kung as an example of why you would follow a hit or blockbuster strategy. And then what are the examples of different products? And then why you'd follow a niche strategy. But now getting back to what we were speaking about earlier on. So we spoke about values and lifestyles, which includes culture. But lifestyles, if you look at the LSM breakdowns, which I think you guys are one of your other subjects, your living standards measure, which is now I think goes to 12. So LSM 9, 10, 11, 12, etc. How much money you make. So how much money you make can definitely influence what you do. It influences where you live. So that has an influence on demographics, or not demographics, geographics, where you live. It has an influence on what products you consume. In the past, maybe you were shopping at ShopRite because it's cheaper. And maybe you've now decided, no, I don't want to shop at ShopRite, and I want to go shop at Woolworths because I can afford it. Even though there's nothing wrong with ShopRite. We shop at ShopRite all the time. Their food is very good, and their prices are right up the street. As they say, check it, it's just up your street. Okay, so maybe you decide that instead of having a rump steak for dinner, you're going to have a fillet because fillet is a better cut of meat, so it's more expensive. So you can see that living standards, money, can be an indicator of, and money can also influence culture. So you have your upper class, your middle class, your lower class, your lower middle class, your upper middle class, your upper class, etc., etc. Think about how culture and class have clashed with, for example, Charles and Camilla and Catherine and William versus Harry and Meghan. This is a clash of cultures. This is a clash of education. This is a clash of upbringing, etc., etc. So, guys, those can all affect the way that you interpret your psychographics. Psychographics can also be the way you think about things. So psychologically, what is the psychology behind the way that you think? Certain artists or products that resonate with you that others don't. So, for example, you may be fundamentally opposed to flying on SAA because you feel that government has wasted a lot of money, and you don't see why you should make government wealthy because government has wasted so much money. So you feel that because of your value system, in terms of, you know, you're anti-corruption and you're pro-democracy, etc., that has an influence on you flying SAA. Another example is some people are very angry in South Africa about the fact that they believe that South Africa is on the wrong side of the Ukraine war. We are, or the government is pro-Russian. We've had military exercises. Here, Putin is coming out to South Africa to come to the BRICS conference. At least in theory, we're supposed to arrest him as part of the International Criminal Court, which government said they're not going to do. And if you look at it, why is the reasoning behind it? Why is South Africa pro-Russia, which means, unfortunately, they have to be anti-Ukraine, which puts them at loggerheads with the EU and the US and the UK? Because the Soviet Union, which is the predecessor of Russia, was a huge supporter of the struggle in South Africa and helped to fund the liberation. Thabo Mbeki, for example, got a lot of his training in Russia. I think he was in Moscow, actually. So, guys, those are all examples of values, attitudes, lifestyles, culture, history, legacy, upbringing, etc. Think about it as well in terms, and think about the knock-on effect that it has in terms of language. Are there certain people who don't like a Jerusalem because it's in Zulu and not Sotho, or Xhosa, or Tswana, or whatever it is? Are people in Joburg and Pretoria different because Joburg is more Zulu Sotho, whereas Pretoria is more Tswana Sotho? Maybe you guys would disagree and say, Rob, that's not true. What about the differences between English and Afrikaans culture? Okay, so the kind of stuff that we've got an Afrikaans friend. We actually stayed with her when we were in Joburg, stayed at my mom's place, and then also we stayed with her when we were in Joburg. She always watches Cakenet. She's Afrikaans, watches Cakenet. So she'll watch Binnelanders, and she'll watch Sevendelaan, and she'll watch this one and that one over there, and all that sort of stuff. And she'll watch, Afrikaans news, and all stuff that I'm not really exposed to. I went to an Afrikaans university, Ra, back in the day, but I'm English, so not the kind of stuff that I would watch. I'd never watch, Binnelanders or Getroud met Rugby or one of those programs because it's not really part of my culture. I do feel a strong connection to some Afrikaans people because, obviously we have things in common. We're all South African, but you look at, for example, the difference between people who are black in South Africa versus people who are black in America. So you're African American, or you're, average black South African, or white South Africans versus white people from the UK or from Europe or from Ukraine or from, Australia. We're all different. And I was actually speaking to a woman that I know who's Indian, and she went to India on holiday, and she said to me, Rob, they will instantly know the minute you walk in the street that you are not Indian. So you may be Indian in terms of, that's your race and that's the color of your skin, but they know that you are not from India. You're not born in India. You didn't grow up in India. You're not Indian. And they will treat you like a foreigner and treat you like a tourist and try and hit you up for money. That's the kind of vibe. So it is so very interesting, the differences in region in terms of culture, how demographics has an effect on that, how geographics has an effect on that, affects values and lifestyles. So let's talk for a minute about demographics, things that are different between men and women. Okay, so if we have a niche product that's focused on women, so back in the old days, this is actually what happened. Okay, women started picking up their husbands' razors to shave their legs or shave their arms or whatever it was. Okay, until companies picked up on this and said, hang on, this is an untapped market for us. Let's create a women's razor. So we're going to make it with a pink handle. It's going to have soft curves. It's going to be more curvaceous, not so stark and square like a man's razor. We're going to have these lovely shaving creams that are scented, and it's going to be lavender and, you know, summer florals and mystic scent and whatever it is, that kind of thing, which a lot of guys be like, no, we want something that's sort of musk or sort of, you know, fresh and shower gelish. These are all examples of how you can create niches around products. So there's that. Products that, you know, are for men, like, for example, when we go and have our beards, you know, shaven, because I actually hate when I look like an old man with my long Father Christmas beard. You'll go and then you'll see beard oil. And there are people who and that is very much, you know, something that is probably focused on mostly men. I mean, I remember if you ever get the opportunity to watch a very good movie called On the Basis of Sex, which is a movie about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who became one of the Supreme Court Justices of America. She took all the acts, all the legislation in the United States that discriminated against women, and she went and attacked each one of those what is the word I'm looking for? One of those acts, one of those laws, and try to get as many of them overturned as possible. And in the movie, on the basis of at the end, the assumption that was made was that, because this was in the 1970s, the assumption that was made that was that most women were still at home working at home, looking after children, that they weren't in the workforce. And she made the assumption. She said, they asked her the question, you know, the judges who were adjudicating the case. They said, "Are you saying that men and women are equal? Because there are certain things that men can do better than women. For example, men can grow a beard better than a woman can, and women can can obviously have children better than a man can. And of course, those lines all now been blurred with transgender and all the, you know, brouhaha around that, etc., etc., etc." But basically, what she said to them in this movie was, "Look, gentlemen, America has changed. You may not see it, and you may want to keep legislation in place that keeps women oppressed. Okay, but 100 years ago, I would not have been able to stand in front of this court and speak to you because I wouldn't have been able to get a law degree." And she specifically then mentioned, for example, what had happened with, you know, race in America, and how, you know, the liberation of black people, and how, and we can see this today, guys, how values and lifestyles even affect things like you know, the Black Like Me movement, Black Lives Matter, those kinds of things. How is that affecting the ability to create niche or blockbuster products? And then, of course, we looked at Wakanda Forever and those other movies, Black Panther, which are specifically aimed at black markets, but they're black blockbusters, okay, black hits. So all of these can factor into the way you plot and plan your answer. It doesn't have to be particularly long. Remember, it's only 10 marks. Okay, but I hope that all of this has given you an insight into what makes up niche. So now let me ask you, my lovely students, any one of you can answer. We've discussed elements that you can use to create niches. We've looked at geography, so either a suburb or a small area, a township, a city, part of a city, a province, a country, a region, etc., etc., etc. So there is a suburb in Sydney called Parramatta, and there's a suburb in Johannesburg called Sandton. How are they different? Well, they're very different. First of all, Parramatta is to the west of Sydney. Sandton is to the north of Johannesburg. Second of all, Sydney is coastal. Johannesburg is inland and up at altitude. Thirdly, Sydney is much older than Johannesburg. Fourthly, the racial makeup and the demographic makeup of the cities is very different. Sydney is a lot of white people, with strong influences from China. Johannesburg is a lot of black people with a bit of an influence from Europe and, of course, India, and then, of course, colored people who are of Malay descent and from the Cape. So you can see, guys, that is in terms of geography, how things are different and how that influences culture. Very different. I remember when we went to Bali on holiday, not Bali, sorry, Phuket, which is in Thailand, on holiday. There were Australians, and they were constantly sitting at the pool. They sat at the pool. I mean, we were in Phuket, in Thailand, with these most beautiful beaches and these beautiful waves and this beautiful nightlife. All they did was sit at the pool, read the book the whole day. I mean, like, are you mad? Why would you fly all the way to Thailand, to Phuket, and sit at the beach and read a book? Not at the beach, sorry, at the pool. We wouldn't even go to the beach. I'm like, no, that's crazy. You can do that in Sydney, or you can do that in Melbourne. Why would you want to come? So that was weird. And I'm like, we wouldn't do that. You know, you wouldn't do that if you were in, yeah. And I remember as well, a family member of mine was telling me that his parents went to Hong Kong on holiday, and they were part of a tour guide. And the tour guide said, okay, guys, we're doing a morning tour. And they went on tour together. And then in the afternoon, they said, okay, guys, everybody back to the hotel. And you can now spend the afternoon at leisure. You can go to the pool. You can go for lunch. You can go for a rest. And his parents, his mother and father, said, absolutely not. We will jump in the taxi or jump on the train, whatever it is, and we're going to go explore some more. We didn't come to Hong Kong to come hang out at the pool or sleep or rest or ever. Sure, eat, absolutely, but eat on the street where you can see and experience and imbibe the culture and the vibe. So you can see, guys, all of those things are affected, how these social elements, these social forces, these drivers, taking it back to Pestle again, affect the way that we perceive things, affect the way that we interact with things, and ultimately affect either whether we have hits / blockbusters or niches. Okay, so we've discussed demographics, we've discussed psychographics, we've discussed geographics. What is the final one again? Who wants to answer for me? Onlena or Didi or Bonolo or Matsidiso? What is the final of the 4 elements that we usually use? You could argue that they're more. What is the final of the 4 elements that we usually use to break up a behavioral? Demographics, thank you, Matsidiso. We've discussed demographics. Bonolo, I would agree with you there. It is behavioral. Thank you, Matsidiso, for your contribution, though. Good, at least you're thinking about these things. Remember, demographics can be influenced by behavior. Okay, think of you guys. You guys are all young. Okay, how would your behavior be influenced by demographics? So, for example, I believe there's a May market tomorrow at on campus. Are you guys all going to attend? Have you got stalls in place? Are you selling stuff? Are you going to go see there? Is it going to be fun at the canteen, etc., etc.? Holidays, yes, good. Behavioral. Okay, so guys, on that events, very good. So, and Matsidiso, you must ask yourself the question, okay, how are demographics linked to behavior? As I said to you earlier on, if you are 16, okay, Aish Valentine's, okay, thanks, Bonolo, cute. Okay, Aish Valentine's, yeah. Okay, if you're 16, how important is TikTok in your life? Very. So that's going to affect your behavior. And how important is, you know, dating at school, finding a little boyfriend or finding a little girlfriend, or, you know, passing the chick? That's your world. You don't focus on things like paying a bond or studying at university or, you know, finding a husband or a wife or having children. None of that factors into your, unless you know, are a little daring and a little nuts, and you decide to have, you know, a child when you're 14 or something, which is a wonderful thing if that's what you want out of life. But I personally think it's a little bit young. Remember, that also means that you've had either consensual or non-consensual you know, some engagement with somebody that is underage, which makes it actually illegal. So that's something to consider as well. But think about it. If you are 16, how does demography affect your behavior? But let's have a look at it, guys. So who can give me an example, either in the chat or by speaking to me in the thing, of a niche product that's specifically created around behavior? And I think Bonolo's really given us a whole lot of them. But give me an example of something that's not Valentine's Day, that is focused on behavior, that is a niche product. You can give me an example. Any thoughts? Panolo, you seem to be on a roll. Any thoughts of yours in the chat? Not typing. While Banola's typing, let's have a look at Valentine's, for example, as the one example that we've used, but I'm looking for other examples. Okay, so Valentine's, you have cards, you have chocolate. So why is chocolate linked to Valentine's? Sanitize when we had Corona. That's behavioral. Very good. Well done, Manolo. Very good. Not sure. Okay, cool. No, that's a good example. Cool. Behavior. That's very good. It could be regarded as, it wasn't niche then. It could be regarded as niche now. I still walk around with a mask if I'm going into ShopRite because not for Corona, not for COVID, but for flu. I don't want to get flu, you know, so, or get, you know, cold or something. So, but masks were mainstream. Now they've become, you know, a bit more niche. Let's have a look. Why is chocolate linked to, I mean, there is some evidence to suggest that chocolate makes people happy. It's good for your heart. It could be regarded as an aphrodisiac. You know, if you give a woman chocolates and roses, why also red? Why is the color red associated with, you know, with romance? Because the heart is red, because of blood. That's why it's red, as opposed to, you know, baby blue or baby pink. You know, baby blue for a boy and baby pink for a girl. Okay, but there's another example as well, aside from Valentine's. Baby showers, that's niche. Chocolate is sweet and it's a cute gift, Matsidi, so thank you. It could mean that you perhaps think the person you're giving it to is sweet, or maybe it's their favorite. Very good. Thank you, Matsidi. So very good point. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing that over there. That is great. I'm not showing my screen. Hey, I should probably share my screen with you guys. Let me do that as well so that you guys can see what's going on. You can see, you can read the content on the goodie. All right, so guys, you should be able to see it now. Okay, chocolate is a cute gift. And red is a color which is said with love, since hearts, love or hearts are mostly drawn or colored in red. Very good. Thank you, Matsidi. So good points. Good points. Okay, cool. So guys, taking it back now to your question. Okay, so it's the management team of a startup. Business in the startup phase, and you have to allocate funds very sparingly. Which strategy would you recommend to them, hits or niche? And why? Okay, so based on everything we've discussed today and everything we've gone through, let's have a look and discuss. Now, again, the example is not very specific. It doesn't tell you what kind of company, startup business it is. But let's have a discussion. Please give me 5 advantages of hits or blockbusters and 5 disadvantages, and then 5 advantages and disadvantages of niches. And then that will also help to inform you what you think. I mean, it could be obvious that you might say, well, Rob, this company should definitely not go with this strategy or that strategy because of the fact that it's a startup with very small budget. But there are ways of working around that, depending on what you decide to do. Okay, but let's have a look. What are some examples of hits or blockbusters? So let me give you the first one. A hit or a blockbuster is a category killer. As Kung says in the book. We actually spoke about it in class that day when I was there with you guys. And I've turned it into an example when we were there with Chris. Excuse me. Success is very, very, very much rewarded and applauded and lauded. And if you have success with a blockbuster or a hit, it can be massively huge success indeed, massively huge success that can lead to further success. So again, let's have a look at the example of Star Wars that Onlena mentioned at the beginning of class. Okay, Star Wars is initially a niche product, but nowadays, if somebody releases a Star Wars movie, you'll get the die-hard fans that will go in to go and watch it just because they want. I remember a couple of years ago, they released a Star Wars at the IMAX theater at Cradle, because we were living in Joburg. Remember, I'm from Joburg, born and bred, and we just moved down to Joburg a couple of years ago to come and soak up some sea. And they had this IMAX show at Cradlestone, at the IMAX theater, and people rocked up in Darth Vader outfits and Obi-Wan Kenobi outfits, looked like Jedi's undercover with lightsabers and with Darth Vader masks, or they came dressed as stormtroopers. It was just so cool. And that is an example of something. It started out as niche because sci-fi is quite a niche thing. It's not necessarily mainstream, but people loved it, and they were there, and it was lots of fun, and people were having a blast, a whale of a time. Also went and watched another one in 4D at Hyde Park, and also got dressed up. Great fun. So you can see, guys, those are examples. So that is an example over there. You can extend it beyond itself. You can create almost like an adjacency. You can parlay it into an absolute brand that ends up selling huge amounts of stuff beyond just the movie. You don't just sell the movie. You can sell soundtracks. You can sell merchandise. You can sell, think about it. If you go in and go look for a Darth Vader mask in a shop, that is money being made off of, a Star Wars franchise. There's little figurines. You can buy little figurines that you can get. Okay, that is, there are books that you can buy these days. I bought a family member of mine a book on Star Wars, on the universes, like a map, like a universe book on Star Wars on the maps, and where they are around the world and in the universe. Fascinating. And where's Tatooine in relation to Alderaan, and etc., etc., etc. And where is the Death Star going to be, and where is the ice moon of what's it called, Hoth or something, etc. Where was the the Rebel base? Where is the star, the Rebel Alliance based, etc. So those are all examples of stuff that niche started out as niches that have now become hits and blockbusters. Okay, so there's your first indication. There's your first clue that a blockbuster can give you massive, huge amounts of success. Okay, so Bonolo's written here, with niche, you already have retained loyal customers. All you have to do is just give them what they want all the time. It's more measurable, especially with the amount of viewers and profit, brand loyalty. So there's less spend on marketing, especially with a movie like John Wick. Okay, cool. I like your thinking. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Bonolo. But why are you referring to it as brand loyalty? Remember, I told you guys there's no such thing. So on what are you justifying and basing your assumption that there is brand loyalty? Is there brand loyalty? How can you prove there's brand loyalty? How do we know there's brand loyalty? In this case over here, what we have is not necessarily brand loyalty, but brand insistence or brand preference. So, but I like your thinking, Bonolo. It is good. You are contributing, which is very good. I'd like to see some more contributions from the other guys. Should be good. But thank you, Bonolo, for sharing. That's great. Okay, so working around the loyal, let's say that you've retained customers that you've used before. All you have to do is just give them what they want all the time. Okay, you can try. It's more measurable, especially with the amount of viewers and profits. It can be, but how is that different to a blockbuster strategy? Isn't a blockbuster strategy also measurable? Okay, your profit margins can certainly be high with niche products. I would agree with you there. So it's less spend on marketing. Okay, yes, absolutely, because you've got an existing brand that you're working with. I would agree with you on that. So like I mean with like John Wick. Now, I haven't even seen John Wick 1. Like, for example, I never watched the Fast and the Furious. I like Paul Walker. I like Vin Diesel. Have never watched any of them. Never watched one. And then when they started bringing out like Fast and the Furious 23, I'm like, okay, no, this is definitely not for me. Not my cup of tea. But you guys might say, well, Rob, that. So I like an art movie. I like a movie like, for example, maybe tonight, still if I have time, I'm going to watch a movie called The Battle of the Sexes, which is about a tennis match in the 1970s between Billie Jean King and some other guy who was, you know, one of the biggest, because that was obviously, and now that's a niche movie. It's never going to make it onto the big screen. Or, for example, I would like, now that'll probably be more popular. There's a movie coming out now, apparently I think in July, called Oppenheimer, which is about the development of the first atomic bomb, which was dropped on Hiroshima, as you guys know. Now, that will probably be more mainstream than something like Battle of the Sexes, but won't be as popular as a Lord of the Rings or as a, you know, one of those, which I never watched. It was never, and I've never seen a Harry Potter ever. I've never even seen The Lion King, to tell you the honest to goodness truth, because by the time I wanted to watch The Lion King, everybody said it was such a good movie. I thought, no, I think everybody's ruined it for me now. Okay. So there we go. Well done, Bonolo. Thank you for your contributions. What else, guys? What are other examples of? So I've given Bonolo's come up with one advantage of niche, and I've come up with one advantage for hit. Give me other examples of. Give me one disadvantage of a niche, and one disadvantage of a hit or blockbuster. What do you guys think? Anybody? Thoughts? Matsidiso, Bonolo, Didi, Manlena? What do you guys think? Okay, and whilst you're thinking about that, Onlena, I'm going to fire off a question at you because I know that you have access to a microphone. What do you think is probably going to be the default suggestion to this company, and why? What do you think? Onlena, are you there? Somebody else? GD? Onlena?
Think,
okay, cool.
oh,
Okay, so Onlena, you can go for it.
okay, I was saying I think a default answer would probably be going for a niche strategy.
Good. Why?
Okay, I'll go off of what I was thinking and why I would say they should go for a niche strategy, right?
Okay.
So I think
Cool.
because they're a startup, it would make more sense for them to focus on a niche strategy because they still have to build their market at first. And maybe like, what's the word? So that they can put their business in a space where they can truly take off. And I think over time, once they have built their market and their place in the industry, then they can maybe do both niche and blockbusters.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good idea. Why would you follow a niche strategy if you're a big company that is very successful? Why would you follow a niche strategy, would you say?
I think. Please
Sorry,
repeat.
I'm saying?
No, you were saying?
No, I was just about to say, sorry, Onlena. Bonolo said, are we still talking about the FM? What's the FM? Bonolo, you have to explain to me, what is FM? The assignment. The formative, no, I don't know what FM is. Sorry, I'm not with you at all. Bonolo, you have to write it out for me, please. I don't know what FM is. Okay, cool. Onlena, please continue for me.
If I remember properly, your question was why would a big business go for a niche strategy, right?
Yes.
I think if they see a market that has maybe where, I don't know how to explain it, but if they see a place in the market where there's space for them to enter, then I don't see why they shouldn't, just because they're a big business. It can still be extra revenue for them.
Very good. How would you refer to that? Take it back to question 1. What is that specifically that we spoke about in terms of question 1? What do we refer that to that as?
Adjacency.
Correct. Good. Yes, an adjacency. Okay, so we look at, and let's look at an example. You would never say that now because you guys don't know it as such. When Woolworths, I've mentioned it before, when Woolworths first started, Woolworths was only a clothing company. They never sold food. Now, I think more than half their revenue comes from food. They've grown into more of a supermarket, or both. It's not a supermarket like a ShopRite or a Pick n Pay, but they are very much focused on food. That started out as a niche that worked very well for them. They've also broken into other things. They try to buy an Australian apparel brand called David Jones. They did buy it. That has done very badly for them in Australia. I think they're actually either pulling out of the Australian market or they're closing that down. It's done very badly. Then they had, for example, other examples like Country Road, which is more sort of upmarket women's fashions, etc., etc. Excuse me. So you can see that it's not unusual for a company. I mean, look, for example, at something like Disney. Disney was focused on like Cinderella and Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast, all these cartoony kinds of things. Okay, and they've now taken over and started doing all of the Star Wars, which isn't really cartoony, and they're not niches, but it was an area that they weren't used to that they moved into. So it didn't start out as a niche, but still it was outside of their quote unquote traditional comfort zone. Okay, so now, Onelena, as I was to ask you, since I have you at the microphone, give it a try, or anybody else, Didi or Matsidiso, if you guys have access to microphones, or you can write it in the box. But no, I'm still wanting to hear back from you, please. What is the FM? I don't know what the FM is. I was still talking about the FM. I don't know what that is. Write your note here quickly. Excuse me. Okay, so when I was typing. Okay, so on Lena, whilst when I was typing, under what conditions are the radio station? Which radio station? Masidiso? I was thinking during the radio station. Okay. The radio station. No. No. We are on question 3. Okay, so we're on question 3. Cool. Okay, great. Okay, on Lena or anybody else, under what circumstances would you be able to get a startup company to follow a hit or blockbuster strategy? It was a startup company. There's only one way that I can think of that you could get them to do that. Any thoughts on Lena? Do you want to take a stab at it? Anybody else? I see Bonola's typing. I'm going to write the question for you guys. Okay, so you guys can think about that, and you guys can give me answers in the chat box if you want to, or on WhatsApp. Cool, thank you, Bonolo. Okay, if they have the right audience, that's the only way you see it. Okay, how about this, guys? What do we mean by this? Brand dovetailing. Riding on the success of another. What do you think that implies? Okay, so put all of typing. Let's see what you guys think. So whilst Bernard is busy typing, just to keep the momentum going as well. So guys, if you are a small startup company that has less clout, what we call clout, power, bargaining chips, let's call it that. Okay, bargaining chips. Okay, if you're a company that has less clout, power, bargaining chips, that you have a bargaining position, like think, for example, we often refer to Julius Malema and the EFF as the kingmakers. Okay, taking back to politics. Okay, because even though he only has 10% of the population that had voted for the EFF, he has the ability to swing an election vote or to join with a company, to join with a party to win over a metro or take over the council or etc. 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 Okay, so Bonolo writes over here in terms of where does a company have dovetailing or they're riding on the success of others, and Bonolo writes not sure, but I think record labels do it all the time when they want to introduce new artists in the industry by collaborating with big artists. It's easy for a company like Coke who wants another drink that they own to leverage from Coke's brand. Yes, I think that's a great example, Bonolo. Thank you. Good. And I hope to see more of your strategic thinking in your next assignment, your F2, which, as you guys know, is due now on the 9th of June. But yes, if you are a small company and you happen to know somebody who's a big company, you can implement a blockbuster strategy by partnering with them or by riding on their shirt tails, by going with them. It was an article I read in the Reader's Digest years ago. What they said is partner with somebody who's really talented or very successful. And obviously, then when they have their next success, if you were there with them, you will then share in that success. And we see it all the time in the music industry. As an example, everybody runs off to Uncle Max, as I like to call him, Max Martin in Stockholm in Sweden. He's made massive hits for Britney Spears initially. That's how he got his start. And NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and Katy Perry has worked with him. Taylor Swift has worked with him. I think, what's her name? Kelly Clarkson has worked with him. Lots of artists have worked with him because he's a hit maker. He knows how to make a hit. Okay, so if you get the opportunity to do that, and in some cases where you get a smaller company that partners with a big company, now the small company either needs to have something very, very, very special that they can use as leverage to speak to the big company. We've just lost Masidiso and Lena. I hope that they're coming back. But you use a they have something very special. So either they need to have a personal relationship with somebody at the big company. Think of somebody like a friend of Jeff Bezos. If he went to Jeff Bezos and said to him, listen, can I partner with Amazon? And Jeff Bezos said, well, either I owe you a favor or you're a family friend, or I see there's synergies between our two companies. If that company is able to leverage off of Amazon, you could have a startup company that used a hit or blockbuster strategy to implement some form of marketing move that would then get the company exposure and possible potential sales. Okay, so that is very important. The other thing is not necessarily that you know somebody, but you have something very small that a company wants. So some form of intellectual property, some form of patented thing, some sort of process or system that you need to involve people with, that will allow you to connect with people in terms of having a hit or blockbuster strategy. You can approach a small company approaching a big company. I wonder sometimes if the United States, for example, is very tolerant of what happens in South Africa, because that is a small country looking up to a big country, because South Africa controls 80% of the world's platinum. So, platinum is obviously necessary and in short supply, and all the platinum group metals, 80% of the world's platinum and chromium and so on and so forth is mined right here in good old, dear old South Africa. And so I wonder sometimes if that is why, politicians are ignorant of what we think that they need or that they want. So a very interesting movie on Google Earth, and how the company that actually came up with Google Earth came to was actually a German company, and Google apparently stole the idea from them of mapping the Earth and turning it into maps that you can see of the world and so on and so forth. And it's a movie you can actually watch about, and I haven't seen it myself. I've got it on my watch list, but you can see there in some cases, if you have come up with something, a great invention, or some sort of process that people want, they're willing to partner with you. But that is very rare, guys. Another example is, if you have a look, I have through marriage a German family, and my father-in-law actually used to say, why is it that the Americans got to the moon before the Russians did? And the joke is because they stole the better Germans. So what happened was the Germans were very far advanced with rockets technology during the Second World War. They were lopping V1 and V2 rockets at London, and they were very far advanced in rocket technology. And the United States and the Soviet Union actually, after the invasion and the defeat of Germany, took those very clever scientists who knew about that stuff either to the Soviet Union, into what used to be, so now Russia, or to the United States, obviously America, to help them develop their rocket programs and win the space race. And of course, that also informed intercontinental ballistic missiles, so your nuclear missiles, etc., etc. So that is an example. And Germany is a much smaller country than either Russia or the United States, with a much bigger economy than Russia, smaller economy than the United States, but that has a lot of clout because it has processes and systems that people want. And so you could argue that from a country brand perspective, because obviously countries are also brands, okay, Germany has become a hit blockbuster brand because even though it's a small country, it has a very robust economy with lots of very clever people who have patented and come up with good ideas. Remember, Einstein was German. Okay, so, and a lot of the technology that we have today, is in terms of even nuclear technology, originally got its start in the laboratories in Germany and other parts of Europe. Okay, so guys, I think that pretty much covers question 3. Okay, so I hope that this has helped you to come up with an idea. But now, what I thought we could do is we're going to go back over the rubric, because Chris wanted me to make sure that we've gone through the rubric with you guys. So I'll be doing that with you guys for the rest of the class. And then what I was going to say to you, if there's time at the end, it would be very, very nice if you want to. You guys can share either with me here or on Cole Campus or on WhatsApp some ideas that you have for your slides if you want to. So remember, let me just reiterate again and let you guys know. The slides that we have don't require you guys to include sources. I would just include a little bit of Kung, so that you can tell me what you understand to be a hit blockbuster and what you understand to be a niche. Okay, your examples can be your own. They don't have to come from either the class notes or from Kung. And then, of course, your recommendations to the management team and why can be your own. And if you decide you say you want to do a blockbuster hit strategy, you can do that. You just need to be able to justify it. Like, for example, what Bonolo said earlier on about niches, and he spoke there about loyalty to brands. Now, as you know, I studied branding extensively. My master's degree was on branding. I do not believe that brand loyalty exists. I think it is not true. So if you're going to include within your lexicon and within your stuff wording that includes brand loyalty, you need to be able to justify it with sources. If you've got sources that prove it to be so, I mean, David Archer, who wrote a book on brand equity, I think. The brand equity is comprised, according to David Archer, I think it's David Archer. Brand equity, according to him. Make a note there for you guys. Okay, so in other words, the value of a brand, usually in terms of financial. So what is the financial value of a brand? For example, Apple, if I'm not mistaken, and I speak under correction, is valued at $1 trillion. That's the value of the brand. It has to replace the Apple brand. That's what it's worth. okay, which I think is insane personally, but anyway, that's what it's valued at. Okay, so according to David Archer, brand equity is comprised, I hope it's David Archer, I think it's Archer, it might not be David, but it's definitely Archer. It's comprised of 4 elements. 1, brand associations. Sorry, let's start at the beginning. Brand awareness. You need to know about the brand. 2, brand quality. 3, brand associations. And then 4, brand loyalty. This is what he says. Okay, so if you have a look at those elements over there, brand awareness, in order for the brand to have value, you need to know that the brand exists. Brand quality, so perceived brand quality, what is the quality of the brand? If you have an Apple phone, is it always going to work? Is it unreliable? Does it switch off? Does it drop easily? Does it break easily? Is it difficult to update? Is it expensive to run? Etc., etc. And then brand associations, who does the brand associate with? So for example, who does the brand hang out with? Who's the brand connected to as a person brand? What do we associate with the brand, either positive or negative? And then quote unquote brand loyalty, which we'll refer to as brand usage. So if the brand is well used, then we will say that it has brand equity. Let's refer to this. So brand preference or brand insistence would be what that falls under over there. Okay, so brand loyalty, brand preference or insistence, and that relates to usage. Okay. All right, so guys, bear that in mind and think about, and you could say, so when you do your presentation, you could say niche or hit, and this is what I think why. So again, as well, it's really an academic exercise, but guys, do as much as you can and make it a fun part of the assignment. Remember, it's only 10 marks, but the more creative you are and the more effort you put into it, the higher your mark is going to be. All right, cool. So that concludes the discussion of question 3. After the break, we're going to take a break now. We're going to come back and then we're going to go through the mark rubrics for questions 1 and 2 from the beginning, which I hope you guys will stay for that gripping session. If you don't, I'm going to natter through it anyway and then just drop the recording into Cold Campus. I wonder if I should do separate recordings. No, I think I'm just going to leave it as one recording. Otherwise, it just becomes an issue. And then what I'm going to do, guys, is next week we will go through the marking rubric for question 3. And then we will also go through technical stuff and see how I can help you more with your technical stuff. And then that will be this semester done. You get a nice long break. And then we'll see you next semester. But anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a break. It's now 22 minutes past 2. Let's reconvene here at 14:40. So in other words, 14:40, 20 to 3. That gives you guys just under 20 minutes to take a break. So let's say between 14:40 and 14:45. Which will give you enough time to take a break, go have a cigarette if you smoke, go use the bathroom, go grab something to eat, stretch your legs, etc., etc. And then we'll come back and we will then have class for, for the duration. We might, I've got load shedding at 4, but I do have backup. So I'll probably still continue if there's still people on the class. And I will see you guys for that class then later. Okay, cool. So enjoy your break. And I will see you when I get back. Hopefully you'll still be here. Cool. Thanks, guys. And if you have any questions, please drop them into the chat box for me, or you can send me a message on WhatsApp. Cool. Thanks. See you just now. Bye. Okay, and we are back. So we're just slowly going to ease back into it. Get everybody on the same page as regards the assignment. So what we'll do is we will just focus as much as possible on the rubric and stuff so that you guys feel comfortable with it. And then we've actually covered a lot of this already, but let's just go through it anyway so that you guys feel comfortable with the whole thing. Okay, and let's, for fun, for the sake of fun, do it in reverse, because we've done which is for 10 marks. I think you guys should have a fairly good idea of what is going to be expected of you guys in terms of the marking. Okay, so let's have a look then at question 2, which we discussed last week, technological change, which is inertia. And you can see in your kung, or your kung, if you will, but it's actually supposed to be kung. Inertia is what stops successful companies, so successful organizations, from benefiting from the opportunities presented by new technologies. Okay, so this question is called technological change inertia. And then the question is relayed. One can argue that MediaMark has taken on the challenges of new technologies and did not fall into a state of inertia. With the statement as a backdrop, discuss inertia and its sources in the context of MediaMark. So you will see that last week I went through the notes with you guys and gave you guys some notes on inertia from Kung, and those notes together with recordings from last week and this week will all be put onto Cole Campus, so you have access for that if you need them. Just have a squiz on Cole Campus that will fill you in on the details. But let's then have a look at your marking rubric, which we're going to discuss. Okay, so guys, Chris has reworked this a little bit. I submitted it to him last week. Okay, so you can see over here, Chris has changed it slightly. He says define a type of inertia using an example, and then explain it with reference to at least 3 sources. Okay, and then application over here, as you can see. Application to MediaMark, explain how MediaMark has embraced change, overcome inertia, and taken on the challenges of new media. Use research to show that you understand how MediaMark has done this. 3 credible, relevant sources should be used. Include academic sources over and above the textbook. Okay, so you can see over here, this is the information that I filled in. And what I wrote over here for you guys is, intangible inertia relates to shared beliefs and cultural assumptions that inform business practice and that leads to a lack of growth. In other words, what a business is likely to do or not do that stalls their growth. This is King, page 95 to 98. One example of this is the failure of an organization to understand that technological change, one of the PESEL factors, drives innovation or decline. Organizations that embrace this will thrive. Those that don't will decline. In other words, to not embrace change is to fall into this kind of inertia. Okay, so this is an example, and guys, you need to flesh this out. This is just an introductory thing. It gives you an overview. It's not complete. This is just to give you some sort of idea. You can see over here, King indicates that some organizations have a culture that is resistant to change when it comes to the technological realm. However, this becomes problematic when companies need to innovate in order to survive and thrive. You can see I've created links related to this. Amara suggests that in highly competitive markets, every product and brand is fighting for the same market share, and hence effectiveness is defined by innovation, with The Economist reporting that consumer anarchy reigns and a plethora of brands are screaming for attention. Now, guys, you can even use this one over here as a justification for question 1. Okay, so Amara says that every product and brand is fighting for the same market share, and hence effectiveness is defined by innovation. Now, you might say, that's, Rob, your question over here, or your answer over here says highly competitive markets. Is there any other kind of market? Are not all markets highly competitive? And I will give you the example again. I saw a statistic the other day. Did you guys know that South Africa has the 5th highest number of KFC branches in the world? So there are only 4 other countries in the world that have more KFCs than South Africa. The number 1 country in the world with the number of KFCs is China, followed obviously by the United States, because that is where KFC originated from. Followed by, I can't remember, actually, then the 3rd one. Followed by, oh, I can't remember either of them. Oh gosh, I know that Britain, the UK, is number 6, just behind us. We have just under 1,000 stores, and Britain has just a few fewer than us. Let me actually quickly find the video that I was watching yesterday. Hold on for me, please. That at least gives you some context. Okay, we can have a look at that. Let you see it. Let's have a look over here. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so the top 6 in the world in reverse order are as follows. In 6th place is the UK with 909 McDonald's branches, followed by South Africa with 955, just a few fewer. Then Russia with 1,000. Now, I don't know if this is still the case. I don't know if McDonald's is, KFC is pulled out of Russia. Okay, followed by Japan with 1,131 branches, followed by the United States with 4,062 branches, followed by China with 7,900 branches of McDonald's. Okay, so if you consider, and let's have a look at the population. Okay, so China's population, this is just a statistic quickly, very interestingly. China's population is 1.4 billion people. 1,400,000, okay, divided by 7,900 McDonald's branches. In other words, sorry, KFC. There are 177,000 people per KFC branch in China. Okay, then let's have a look at the United States. The statistic again. The United States has how many branches? What did I say? It was 3,000 odd. Hey, let's have a look here quickly at the statistic. And we should actually write this down. Let's go back to the group and write this down. Okay, so okay, KFC. Okay, number of KFC boxes per country. In 6th place is the UK. With 909. In 5th place, I'm going to press enter again, is SA with 955. And in 4th place is Russia. Is this still the case though? And in 3rd place is Japan with, let me see the statistic here again quick. $1,131. Second place is the United States with 4,062. And in 1st place is China with 7,900. 7,900. Okay, so now if we do that per capita, let's look at that. Let's see how we fare per capita. Okay, so China is 1.4 billion people. Divided by 7,900 stores, so there are 177,215 people per store in China. United States, that's about 330 million people, give or take. Okay, much lower, it's 81,000 people per capita, or per store at least. Russia, statistic, I'm not sure the statistic is. In Russia, we quickly have a look at world population figures. You see how these are all related to each other. So interesting. And how this all affects. And you can see, guys, this ties you back to PESEL with different PESEL factors. Okay, so they still say that China is got more people than India, but it won't be long. The United States actually 334 million. Let's quickly recalculate that. Okay, so 334 million. Divided by, how many stores did we say it has? 4,062. Okay. The United States is slightly higher. It's actually 82,000 odd. 82,225, give or take. Okay, Russia is number 3. No, Japan. The population is about 125 million. Let's have a look quickly. Excuse me. Japan is 124 million, give or take. So, and they have, so it's about 109,000 people per KFC store. In Russia, they still have stores after all the American companies have pulled out of Russia following the invasion of Ukraine. Russia has, see here, $146 million people. Take. Okay, and they have 1,000 stores. About 146,000 people per store. And then South Africa, ridiculously high. Check the official statistic. Official statistic in South Africa is 60 million. That's what I thought it was. Divided by 955 stores. So in South Africa, there's one KFC for every 62,000 people. Is that over there? 827. Yes, there we go. Okay. As you can see, okay, it is way, way higher than any one of the other countries. Let's look at the UK. The UK, even the UK, which is number 6. Let's quickly look at the UK stats. UK is on 67 million. Okay, so 67 million divided by, what's UK on 9? Let's say. $909 stores. Okay, that's the last statistic we'll do, and then we'll calculate quickly. Okay, 73,707. 73,707. Now you can also see why the UK, why Nando's has become so popular in the United Kingdom as well. Lots of those stores there because people in the UK also love chicken. But you can see there, guys, one KFC store for every 62,000 people in South Africa, which is way, 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 way lower than China and even the United States and even Japan, which has got far, far more people and far more money than we do. But look how popular it is. So the point I'm trying to make, taking it back to the assignment, okay, is as you can see there, okay, all markets are competitive. So you can just imagine, okay, look over there. So even KFCs are competing with each other because there are only 62,000 people per KFC. So you can imagine how much South Africans love chicken and how much they eat chicken because it's extremely popular. We've got one just across the road from us over here as well. So yes, it's very convenient to go to the KFC. But if you're taking it now back to question 1, where if you have a look, just to contextualize for you guys, to have a look at question 1, where it says over here in 1.1, the board states, this is now relating to the radio station again. So Bonolo, now this is related to that over there, but just briefly. The board states that revenues are down due to too much competition in the community radio station arena. So just before I met with you guys, I had a class with one of the evening students who works internationally, and she can only do classes in the morning. And we were busy talking, and I said to her, Tabi Singh, you can't use competition in industry as an excuse for why your company is doing badly, because all industries are competitive and all products and services have competitors in the market. That's the way it works. You know, that is unfortunately, I mean, the only way you'd have able to have no competitors is if you didn't have any other people around, didn't have any other companies that could potentially service people. So competition has been, you know, going around since the beginning of humanity's existence on Earth. So let's now take this back to question 2 again. So you can see over here, we have brands that are all screaming for attention. Okay. And this further relates to what Haig and Brayball says about brand fatigue, or the notion of companies becoming bored with their brands, which then start to lack creativity, as well as brand irrelevance, or the notion that when a market evolves drastically, the brand faces the risk of becoming irrelevant and obsolete. Similarly, Reynolds reports that with pressure to adapt increasing future business models will have to take greater account of a far more powerful combination of market drivers than before, while at the same time also seeking to create first mover advantages over and over again if they are to succeed. The biggest challenge being the new triple bottom line of economic, social, and environmental performance. Therefore, the only way for a business to stay out in front is to be aware of trends that are affecting the marketplace in the hope of creating some sort of sustainable competitive advantage, as per Gosselin and Gresham, which will allow a specific brand to become more distinct than a competing brand. So guys, this also relates to the radio station. Okay, so you might say, well, Rob, how is any of this relevant? You've gone on this long tangent about KFC stores. The point I'm trying to make is that it's a very competitive market, especially in a country like South Africa, where you only have 60,000 people per KFC branch. Okay, in other countries in the world, let's have a look at again. Okay, in China, if you were to open a KFC, you automatically, let's move up, here we go, have 177,000 people who can support your KFC branch. So South Africa is almost more competitive with an economy which is not doing all that great at the moment, and lots of issues around load shedding and so on and so forth, which are all problematic for for business and for business success. So take it to question 1.1. You can't use competition in the marketplace to justify why your radio station is doing badly. For question 2.2, for question 2 at least, MediaMark exists in a very competitive, highly competitive market because that is the nature of the media industry. And yet they have chosen not to allow themselves to become complacent and to embrace new technology and new digital media, so that they are not battling with inertia. And because of that, they're able to overcome their inertia. And because of that, they have continued to be successful. So you can see over here, contextualizing all of this. MediaMark indicates that over time, the restructuring of the company to embrace the political, economic, and technological changes in South Africa saw them rebrand from Radmark to MediaMark. Radmark itself emerged from the SABC radio stations that broke away and became independent of the parent organization, such as Jacaranda FM and East Coast Radio. MediaMark embraced the privatization and digitization of the media industry, in particular radio, and since being bought out by Kagiso Media, has been able to position itself as a one-stop media advertising hub that includes digital reach, radio reach, digital audio reach, and social media reach. So I've referred a lot to MediaMark in that one paragraph there, guys, which is not necessarily the best, but you can see I've then immediately below it contextualized by including academic sources. Hutt and Spare caution that high-tech marketing requires building of a strong brand. This leads on to e-branding, where Walker asserts, another source, that e-branding is the process of establishing a customer's viewpoint about a company and its product in an online environment. MediaMark has done this very successfully, both from the point of positioning its own business and also helping the brands to position theirs. MediaMark's website explains its brand positioning as a company that seeks to help other companies create strong, so there should be strong, not string, strong digital environments, strong digital brand footprints by driving engagement and hits. Okay, so you can see, guys, we are integrating theory, academic theory, with theory from MediaMark with your own interpretation. This is what creates a robust answer for your assignment. Similarly, eBrand suggests that electronic branding is the establishment of a brand in the digital world by extending the brand into the realm of electronic communications, given its increased importance as a function in modern society. As does Reda, also states that electronic branding is taking a brand and applying it to electronic media. Furthermore, Fazerink purports that electronic branding is simply the application of branding in an electronic sense, where the application of the timeless principle of branding has been interwoven into a business environment or complexity that involves electronic media, such that the greatest application is an extended dimension of communication vehicles and avenues, an extended dimension of distribution, and an extended dimension of company and customer contact capabilities. All right, so guys, you can see over here, just to contextualize, the ability of MediaMark to have interwoven the brand into a powerful digital force, and that they have also been able to do this with companies that use them, shows how their ability to innovate has kept them relevant in 2023 and at the forefront of digital driving forces. In an age when radio listenership is in decline, MediaMark has been able to retain customer engagement and radio listenership for brands like Jacaranda FM and East Coast Radio because of the seamless integration of both traditional media, such as radio, and new digital media. And I said over here, you'd need to include an additional source for this last piece of writing. And then, guys, you can see over here sources that I've used. So remember, when I mark your assignments, I go and check all your sources. Okay, so I've included over here MediaMark, about us information, and platform reach. You can see over the page. Actually, sorry, those sources have been removed. I had included some of them. I think it's in one of the other places. But anyway, so guys, you can see over there. So, oh, I think the reason why I took the sources out is you guys couldn't use them in your assignment. Lol. Okay, there we go. So, okay, so guys, you can see over here again. What you have to do is look at the problem of the question, answer the question, include some of your own thinking, backed up by sources, contextualized to the company or the problem under discussion, in this case, MediaMark, and then include both popular and academic sources, and make sure that it's well integrated, it links properly, it makes logical sense, the flow is good, and that's so very important, guys. Before you submit your assignments, you should read them thoroughly to make sure that you know what's going on. Okay, let's have a look then at the marking criteria for this question. Okay, so definition of type of inertia using an example. Okay, guys, I can give you no marks if you don't do the question. Oops. So if you don't do the question, I can't mark it. Very important. Where is, oh, crumbs. Let's see, what happened? Okay, no, oh, there we go. Okay, next, fail. After reading the definition, the way, if we can, we can't, okay. After reading the definition, the reader does not have an understanding of this type of inertia. That's fail. A pass. After reading this definition, the reader has an understanding of this type of inertia, but an example is not provided, or one is provided, but it's not relevant. Okay, so that is a pass. Distinction then, if you're looking to move in that direction. After reading this definition, the reader has an understanding of this type of inertia, and an example is provided, and the example is relevant, but there are issues with either language or reference. Okay, and you can see there, guys, in full mark cases, you provided a brilliant definition You understand it, an example has been provided, the example is relevant, and there are no issues with language or referencing. Okay. You can see again discussion of the type of inertia. Fail if it's not done. Then the discussion is either superficial or irrelevant. If you failed, you still got some marks, but it's irrelevant. Okay. Characterized by a lack of focus on the type of inertia. So for a pass, the focus is maintained on the type of inertia for the most part, but the answer is lacking in detail. For distinction, the discussion is relevant and adds in-depth insight into the kinds of inertia in question, but there are errors in language and referencing. And then, of course, for an absolute knock it out the park, get a super brilliant mark. Discussion is relevant and adds in-depth insight into the kind of inertia in question with no issues in language or referencing. And guys, at that kind of level, what I really need to see is innovative thinking to the extent, as I said to a student this morning, remember, I want to learn from your assignment, and I learn from all of you guys. So when I read your assignment, I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. I never realized that. Oh, that's a very interesting part, because when I read from your assignments, I'm increasing my own knowledge. This is the basis on which master's and doctorate students get their M's and PhDs, is that they basically become skivvies for professors who are looking for new research. So the professors send them to go do research on new things, and they use that research to present their own papers, which actually feels like quite an horrendous way of doing things, but that's a global phenomenon. You know, that happens all over the world, not just in South Africa. Okay, guys, and you can see application to media mark, 8 marks. What you get out of this, out of 4 for the section, will be multiplied by 2. Here's the application to media mark. If it's not done, you get 0, obviously. If you fail, media mark is discussed, but not in terms of how to overcome inertia. In other words, the answer is descriptive and lacks application. In the next one over there where you pass, media mark is discussed. Oops, question or comment or something. Okay, just readmitted Matsi Diso. She was off the chat for a bit. Okay, so guys, media mark is discussed. This is for a pass. And there is an attempt to show how to overcome inertia, but the answer is lacking in detail. And the case of media mark as overcoming inertia is not convincing. More research needs to be conducted and included. For a distinction, media mark is discussed in a convincing way. Case is made for how it overcomes inertia. And there's sufficient detail to make the case, but there are errors in language and referencing. And then, of course, for shoot out the lights, high marks. It is just a model answer with everything in place. All right, so you can see over here, then moving along. And guys, these descriptions of marking rubrics feel very dry and technical, but as you work through them, okay, just ask yourself the question. Okay, let's go back to the question again and look at the question. Okay. Discuss inertia and its sources in the context of media mark. Okay, so take a source of inertia as an example, and let's talk about company culture. So if you look at the slides that I presented to you guys last week, company culture can be, I mean, in some cases, what King seems to imply is that it's not a strategy problem, it's an implementation problem. But guys, it can sometimes be a strategy problem. Sometimes the strategy is at fault. I'll give you an example of a lack of application of strategy. I'll give an example of one of my SME clients, because obviously I also, consult to industry. A lovely lady who owns a guest house, a boutique 5-star guest house, that is not, she has some people in her guest house. It's not at 80% capacity, which is where she'd like it to be. She's managed to maintain her 5 stars because she runs a very beautiful establishment. It's lovely, and she's, obviously always impresses the SA Tourism Board, and they always seem to be very impressed. Anyway, so she approached me because I was doing some social media writing for her, and she approached me and said, "Can you put together a strategy for me?" So I said to her, "Sure." So I went and did some research on what works, what doesn't, what occupancy rates are in her area, what occupancy rates are like in general, what's happening in the industry, what people expect these days from a 5-star boutique guest house, what her points of differentiation are, how she can separate herself from and create a unique branding proposition, what her positioning statement would be round about that unique branding proposition, and so on and so forth. I had a look at existing research. I said, "Do you have any existing complaints? Do you have any existing compliments? Do you have any existing requests? What do people tell you?" Because these all give you indicators as to what it is that the market expects from you. And then I also generated for some ideas on how to grow her business by connecting more with the community. Anyway, I presented the strategy to her. She loved it. She said it was great. And then I started trying to implement the strategy for her. And she contacted me and said, "I'm not very happy because I don't think that this is what I'm really looking for, etc., etc., etc. And I don't think that's really working." And I said to her, "Madam, I understand your concerns. However, my hands are tied, because either you need to give me carte blanche to run with a strategy to make it work." And please note as well, marketing and media is not a panacea. It is not an elixir. It is not a cure-all. I can't take a media tablet, a social media tablet, a Facebook tablet, a marketing tablet, and hope that my company is going to be better in the morning. It takes time. It takes effort, because people don't respond immediately to changes in market share. It's effort, because people are slow. People have a lot of inertia. So either you need to give me carte blanche to be able to implement your strategy for you, or alternatively, you need to implement the strategy that I'm suggesting to you. I sent her the email. She never responded. And at this point in time, all I can say to her is, "Well, I presented you with a workable strategy. And unfortunately, unless you either give me the necessary permission to go ahead and implement the strategy for you, or you implement the strategy yourself or get somebody to help you with it, unfortunately, there's nothing I can do if the strategy doesn't work." So the strategy in this case isn't bad, although sometimes it could be, okay? But in this case, it is just a culture. She is an electrical engineer by profession. She doesn't really understand marketing aspects. She's been running the guest house for a number of years. She's very busy. She's married to a doctor. The doctor's busy building a hospital. And what they really actually need is somebody who can run it for them and pay a salary. However, they're not willing to make that investment financially because it's an expense that they can't justify at this point in time. So guys, you can see in some cases a company has inertia because it's not implementing a workable strategy. In some cases, it's not overcoming inertia and being successful because it doesn't have a strategy. In some cases, it is a bad strategy. In some cases, it just, it's stuck to always doing what we used to do. So we discussed last week, we spoke about BlackBerry, we spoke about Nokia, and 15 years ago, these companies absolutely ruled the airwaves. They were king of the hill, top of the heap. And today they're virtually, BlackBerry, I don't even think exists anymore. As for Nokia, clearly doesn't do nearly as well as it used to. Let's have a quick look. and see what Nokia says in terms of what the internet says about BlackBerry. Let's see if it still exists. Past tense, BlackBerry was a brand of smartphones and other related mobile services and devices. The line was originally developed and maintained by the Canadian company BlackBerry Limited, formerly known as Research in Motion, or RIM, from 1999 to 2016, after which it was licensed to various companies. Okay, so guys, what they did basically is they farmed it out, and it was a meteoric rise and a meteoric fall. It only started in 1999 and was discontinued in 2022. Okay, so you can see meteoric rise and meteoric fall. And the reason why is because they just got, here we go. This is what it says on the internet. However, BlackBerry lost its dominant position in the market due to the success of the Android and iOS platforms. Its numbers had fallen. Okay, so at its peak in 2011, there were 85 million BlackBerry subscribers worldwide and users. I mean, I had one. I used to have one. Okay, by 2016, that had fallen to 23 million, which is almost a quarter, a decline of 3/4. Okay, and then they said in 2016 that it's ceased to design their own BlackBerry devices in favor of licensing to partners to design, manufacture, and market. But guys, the long and the short of it is, why did BlackBerry fail? Because of Apple and Samsung. They just started offering a better product and service. So the same thing would happen to MediaMark if MediaMark was stuck like MyFM in their thinking, in their arcane thinking, in their archaic thinking around, well, let's just do what we always used to do, especially in the media world. You guys would know better than me how quickly it changes. So you have to really and truly focus a lot on staying current. And that relates to fusion of innovations. We spoke about that as well. I told you guys how the innovations curve moves us forward. Okay, so you guys, if you want to get extra marks, because this is a big question, guys, with lots of marks, 20, go and have a look at and include in your assignments the fusion of innovations. Okay, it's a bell curve. I'll let you guys know. Okay, and generally speaking, it relates to the way people adopt or reject. Let's call it that. Reject technology. Or not technology, anything. Let's call it product, service, or idea. Okay, and it's a bell curve. You can also go and have a look, for example, at and how this relates to the lecture that I did for you guys on branding. Okay, so I think it was the second lecture. Lecture number 2. Okay, we spoke about people. So the first big struggle is creating brand awareness. Okay, so excuse me, that's important. Brand awareness. Well, what's the opposite of brand awareness? You can have non-awareness. So people don't know your brand, or they do know your brand, but they reject your brand. People might say, oh, Rob, if you ever heard of company X, they're like, no, I have no idea. And like, oh, now I've created awareness, now I'm aware of the company. People might say, oh, well, Rob, have you heard of company X? I say, yes, but I don't use them because I don't like them. That's brand rejection. Okay, so either way, you want to try and overcome them. And as I said in the thing, try to find out why is it people are not aware of your company, or why is it they're rejecting your company? And then you need to decide. But in the case of, like I said, BlackBerry, it's because Apple and Samsung just have better prospects. And then Annalena actually mentioned in the class where we were together in class, And she said, Apple has anticipated my needs and tells me that I need things even before I realize that I need them. And this is, you know, wonderful for me. I didn't even know, because nobody said to Apple, let's write this down for you guys. Nobody said to Apple, you should integrate phone plus MP3 player / streaming plus movies plus email plus internet plus media, which includes WhatsApp. Back in those days, we used to use BBM, which is the equivalent of WhatsApp today, so BBM. Excuse me. Okay, in the same way as well, nobody said to McDonald's, as we mentioned before, you should draw more customers in by creating a clown that is branded McDonald's, the Ronald McDonald, creating drive-throughs, pull more people in because it's super convenient. Oopsie. And creating play areas. Draw in parents and children. Okay, they sat down and said, listen, how can we extend, how can we create these adjacencies I just spoke about? Adjacencies, there we go. Okay. How can we create these adjacencies that will allow us and help us to be able to draw in more customers? Because at the end of the day, it's all about getting people to buy more burgers. That's what it is. Even the whole idea, if you watch a movie, very good movie, you should watch it, The Founder, Michael Keaton. What about McDonald's? This is all about McDonald's. And if you have a look at that, it is a really good idea, because the guy who came up with these systems to help McDonald's become a better company wasn't even the McDonald's brothers. It was Ray Kroc. This guy was actually wanting to sell milkshake machines. That was what he was trying to do. Okay, so guys, a very good movie, but the point I'm trying to make is that you can either innovate or you can stagnate. So keep that in mind, innovate or stagnate. Okay, so let's take this now back to, remember guys, think about it logically, and then importantly, go and read your assignment and go and check what do you need to go through. So use of sources and referencing overall. Your mark allocations here based on your rubric. If you use no sources, questions not answered, you have to get a low mark. Fail, frequent errors in sourcing, referencing, more incorrect than not correct. Sources not integrated into the discussion. hanging sources. Sources stand in isolation to each other. Less than 8 sources used overall. At least 6 sources used overall. You can see over here. It suggests we're going to use for the marking rubric. Okay, most referencing is correct, but there are errors. Sources are at times integrated into the discussion, but not always more than one hanging source. There is an awareness of how the sources relate to each other, but there are many cases where a link has not been made. As you can see here, this is really important. This is especially important for next week when we go through this, the referencing stuff. You see over here at least 6 sources being used overall. No errors in referencing. Most sources are integrated into the discussion. Maximum 1 hanging source. And there's an awareness of how the sources relate to each other, but there are obvious cases where they do relate, but the connection has not been noted. Okay, and then for full marks, you can see over here, Chris suggested at least 6 sources are used overall. There are no errors in referencing. All the sources are integrated into the discussion. There's an awareness of how the sources relate to each other, and this has been consistently done. And you guys, you can see, okay, so it's out of 20. 4 criteria at 4 marks each equals 16, with application to media mark doubled to count of 8, and that gives you then your 20 marks overall. Okay, so guys, that is for question 2. Are there any questions? I see we don't have a lot of people left. I think Lena has either left or her internet has faded on her.
Rob, I have a question.
Yes.
I have question. Well, yeah, it basically refers to all the question because I want to understand.
Okay.
Question 1. Actually, all of question 1, 2, and question 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3.
Yes.
When we mention the bullet point information that is on the brief, do we have to reference? We don't have to, right? We just, because I did see that Chris was writing them in the table, but obviously they're in quotation marks to show that it's not our words. Do we have to reference that?
No, you don't have to reference this. There's a reference the assignment. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. You know, so you can just mention it because, you know, look, you can't reference absolutely everything. Otherwise, you just have, 4 billion references, and 3 billion words. It's too much. But, what you want to do is you want to reference. Remember as well, referencing is about, because the rule of thumb is your opinion is important and it matters, but your opinion is important and matters in the context of that you've gotten this information from somebody else who's able to substantiate what you say. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, cool. Okay, so
and also
yes?
I wanted to ask, with the links in the tables, do we have to put the link after every like in each table after every, is it I can't quite remember because I wrote down these questions. Now I'm not quite sure where exactly, because we're supposed to add the links, right, within the tables, like as references, so that you can, like, sources, links for the sources. Is it for every table, for every question in question 1?
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to say to you is the reason why Chris done it in table format is because it's part of a rubric. I would advise you, I hope you haven't started, otherwise you just have to undo the table. I would advise you not to do this in table form. I think it needs to be in long form, except for question 3, which is going to be a PowerPoint presentation, but it shouldn't be in a table form. And what you should do is, so let's open up this over here. Let me show you.
So it's just question 1 that's in table form. The rest is just like question 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.3 or 1.4. So basically, what I want to understand is that the first question 1.1 to 1.4, can we do it in table form the way Chris did it? And then obviously section B, question 2 and 3, we can obviously, it's like usually long form or paragraph forms.
You could, I mean, I'll have a look at it and mark it, but this is what I envisage. I mean, I don't think it's wrong, you know, to do it in table form. I'm not going to mark it down. It just needs to have, but let's say, for example, okay, so let's see, okay, so let's say we're going to do it in first person. Okay, so as the assistant manager of MyFM, my first duty would be to go to board and inform them that competition within industry is a norm that should not be used as a justification for the radio stations lackluster, let's not call it poor, lackluster performance. To substantiate, and that's just because this is actually correctly spelled, but this is the British spelling, mine's an American, this claim. Norman, 2015, page 83, states that all businesses exist in a state of competition. But you could add another source if you wanted to, add another source but not necessary. Okay, if you wanted to. Then I would say, thus, or moving on from this, you're creating your link, moving on from this, and with this in mind, as an example, I would inform the board of the following suggestions. And then, as you can see over here, it said mention 3. Okay, so, no, did it say 3? No, it didn't. It didn't actually say 3. Okay, but let's say you decide to choose 3. Okay, because I think that's what we discussed in the rubric. Okay, 1. Where is the, okay. The stations, we could say propensity for only posting social media once a week is inadequate. Because as per Sinestra, as an example, okay, let's say this is an online source. Social media, not effective if not done daily. This is confirmed by, let's say, 2020, who indicates that, that radio stations are under threat if they do not embrace changes, digital changes in the landscape, which include greater use of social media, such as whatever, YouTube. Okay, so this is, now you're going to go back and you're going to go and read it and check it and say, okay, does it make sense to me? Let's have a look. Okay, as assistant manager of MyFM, my first duty would be to go to the board and inform that the competition within the industry is a norm that should not be used as justification for the radio station's lackluster performance. To substantiate this claim, Norman states that all businesses exist in a state of competition. Okay, cool. Moving on from this, that's fine. And with this in mind, I would inform the board of the following suggestions. The station's propensity for only posting social media once a week is inadequate because, as per Zenestra, social media is not effective if not done daily. This is confirmed by Yeng, who indicates the radio stations are under threat if they do not embrace digital changes in the landscape, which include a greater use of social media such as YouTube. And then you can even add on to it. So you can do it in table form. I'm not going to penalize you for that. But if you do it in, it's fine either way. But the thing is, so in terms of your referencing, you can see over here, you've just mentioned the source in the thing. Now you're going to create your list of sources to answer your question. List of sources.
So basically what you're trying to say, Rob, is as long as everything that is required of me from the rubric is mentioned, it doesn't matter whether it's in table form or paragraph form.
No, it doesn't. But just be aware over here, for example. Okay, so I think one of the issues that you had with yours, I'm not mistaken, okay, was you had this. So you can see over here. Okay, so now let's say this is whatever her name is, Uma Zenestra. Okay, and let's say okay, so here we go. Social media is imperative for it to survive in 20s. Let's say, okay. Then you've got, oh, it's going to be HTTP. So now you've got your thingy. Let's see. Unless you're going to go and copy from the thingy. So let's call it. Oopsie. Doing it, it needs to be an S. Let's see. Let's see. It's not doing it. Okay, maybe it's because I don't actually know the address properly. Okay, it's not a real thingy. Okay, but that would obviously highlight it. Okay, and then you do date of access. And today's date is what, the 24th of May, 2023. Okay, so now I'm going to look and I'm going to say, oh, this is awesome. Very good source over here. This is great, or one of the sources. Now I'm going to go and check your source, and then I'm going to click on your link, and I'm going to go and check your source. And then I say, okay, cool. So this is now correct. Don't know where the ticks are, but this is correct. You have done this correctly. So whether you do it in a table form or you're doing, so here is, you're not going to put your link here. Okay, you're just going to mention your source here. Your link is going to be here in your list of sources over here. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, Rob.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Masidiso, do you have any other questions around that?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, I don't mind if you do it in table form. It's fine. It just needs to. It's fine. You actually the first student just asked me that. I wasn't expecting it in table form, but I don't mind if it's in table form. It's fine. It's cool. That's
okay, so I was also looking at my previous F1 assignment, and I realized that what you were talking about, the sources, the reference list, that it didn't have URLs, especially for reports and journals.
Yes.
And yeah, I'll fix that in the coming assignment.
Okay, cool. Because remember, I need to be able to, if you look at this one that I did over here, let me just see this one over here. If you look, okay, click on over here. See, this is reference to, I will go, oops. Okay, let me not do that. Okay, cool. But if you go and have a look and you click on the source, that's what I do. I'll go and click on the source, and I will go and look for the source that you've given me. I don't know why it's doing this over here. I do have antivirus. Why is antivirus not working? Huh. Okay, well, let's just do this anyway. I wonder why the antivirus is not working. Should be working. Okay. So you'll quit media mark. Oh, because it's gone to thingy. That's why. Oh no, I don't want it on that thing. No. Forget about that. No, let's take it back to what's his face. So what I'll do is I'll click on the source, your source. Okay, and then let's go to this one. Okay, and I'll type it in, and I'll go and check your source. And I was like, oh, okay, there we go. That's a fantastic source, or that's a great source, whatever it is. Like, so it needs to be. Otherwise, I can't verify that I can't verify that you've used that. So it's a big red flag for me. I need to be able to, and that's why as Matsidi, so you know it. You were there that day when we went down to the library, weren't you?
Yes, I was. Hello, Rob?
Yes, we make those textbooks out. Yes?
Yes, I was. Yes, I can.
10 minutes, yeah,
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
You would die.
Okay, cool. Okay, so if you've got textbooks from the library, because I know some of those textbooks, then I know, okay, you've now put together a very robust answer. Because really, you know, you're a smart young lady, your mark should really be way higher than it was. So I think the big problem is your sourcing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, cool. Okay, great. Any other questions that you have?
No question.
Sure. Okay, cool. Okay, great. Okay, so let's have a look then at the rest of the stuff. Okay, so this is pretty much what we've covered now for question 2. Okay. Let's now go back to 1.4. Okay, this one is not as important as question 1.2, which carries a lot more marks. But let's go through it anyway. Okay, so you can see over here, this is what Chris has said, because he edited these slightly, which is great, because Chris definitely has your back, which is fantastic. He's really very student-centric, which is wonderful. Okay, so let's see over here. Make suggestions as to how, by the way, I just want to let you know as well, I did speak to him about the culture of a lack of communication at Boston. And he's obviously, you know, he said he is aware of it, and he has mentioned it to the powers that be, but, you know, sometimes it takes a while for culture to change, you know, so just wanted to let you know. And I know you've had your frustrations with various systems and, you know, with things. I think it's just really important to continue voicing your concerns and then trying to get feedback. If something really, really bothers you, you know, then you should. But I have addressed, you know, your concerns with Chris, and he is, like I said, very student centric, and and has taken note of it and is trying to address certain issues around sort of slow communication from, because I spoke to Lindiwe last week, as what I said, when I was in class, so it was 3 weeks ago now, I said, oh, have you guys seen those positions up, those, paid positions up on the notice board at reception? And she's like, oh, those are like old. I'm like, oh, okay. So, I don't know how it works, with students from an outsider. What I can also say to you is, and you may not necessarily agree with this, I think Boston is a very good institution. And I can honestly say to you, having studied at UNISA, I don't know if you've heard and seen that the Minister of Education has actually said that they want to put UNISA under administration because of, bad, administration there. Academically, UNISA is a fantastic university, but in terms of some administrative functions, I think it's improved. But the point that I'm trying to make, without belaboring the point too much, is that every institution has its issues. I was also at UJ, and before that at Rao. I had big problems with my PhD at UJ, which I started. I wasn't connecting with my supervisor. I put out red flags. I contacted the dean of the faculty. He was unsympathetic. I actually then, lodged a complaint with, the various people, and it all sort of, and really at the end of the day, they basically said is suck it up and start again. That's what they basically said. Like, okay. So much so that it put me off the PhD experience for some time. I might go back to it. I don't know if I'm going to do it at UJ. I don't know if I'm going to do it in the field that I was going to be doing it in. I'm not sure. But the point I'm trying to make is that, the world is not a perfect place. And I hope that gives you, I say, well, Rob, thanks so much. That means nothing. That's cold comfort. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is this as well. If you need something from me, I am here for you. And I will most certainly pass your concerns along to the powers that be. What happens to them after that is really out of my sphere of influence, because I'm just a lecturer at things. So I hope that helps, Matsidi. So I know you've had your concerns, but anyway, okay. So moving along and getting back to this over here. Okay, so recommendations for targeted advertising. You'll see Chris said, make suggestions as to how the radio station can use one targeted or two performance-based advertising to help them reach their ultimate goal, which is to stay in business. Use your creativity to come up with ideas and then back those ideas up. Okay, with theory. You can see over here, benefit of applying the suggestion. Use research to prove why implementing your recommendation on targeted advertising or performance-based advertising will contribute to turning the business around. One credible, relevant source per recommendation is enough. And the other thing I was going to say, Matsui, is I had a chat with a student today who's before this class, and Tabi Singh is her name. She is a part-time student, evening classes. She's working, she's got kids, and she's a single mom, and so on and so forth. I'll say the same thing to her that I say to you that I said to her. You're unlikely to fail this course because I think, you're smart, and I think you have high standards, but you could do better, and obviously you want to try and do the very best that you can. I heard from her today that students who get distinctions for their courses actually get discounts. I don't know if that's true, but you know what? You owe it to yourself to really use your brain in a smart way to live up to your full potential. When you were in class, you made some noticeable and meaningful contributions, as did most students. I can tell you now that personally for me, I feel like students who have made very little effort to come to class are the students who are really shooting themselves in the foot, because you can't really contextualize the stuff. It's not like UNISA where you get a study guide that you have to work through, and even UNISA has workshops with lecturers or you get to like this on Teams. You get to communicate with them to get context and that kind of thing. So it's not, no, unless you were in a situation, and for the amount of money that you're paying for the course, I would definitely connect with a lecturer. So unless you were in a situation where it was completely online with no contact whatsoever, then I would say, what I used to do is refer to YouTube sources, because you couldn't ask a lecturer a question and say, listen, I don't understand this, I don't know what this means. And so that was all difficult. So yes, Masidi, so I just want to let you know that I'm going into load shedding at 4 o'clock, and my connection may very well die. If it does, then we're going to continue with these things next week as per Chris. So 1.4, 1.3, 1.2, 1.1, and then also focus on technical, which we've actually done. So just to let you know, are you good with that? So I'm going to try and switch over, but if I fail abysmally, then just know that it's because my connection died. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Cool. What other questions do you have? Are you feeling better about the course?
Yeah, we're getting there, I guess.
Okay.
Step by step.
So I say again?
I'm saying step by step. We're getting somewhere. We're getting there.
Okay. That's good. Okay, that's good. Cool. Okay, cool. Sorry. Okay. Good. Well, let's see what happens. But if I lose you, thanks for coming to class there. It was good to see you. And please come again next week so you can get the last of the lectures, because it is the last lecture for the first semester. But 2, 3, and 4 should be much better for you. You should do much better in those.
Yeah, but I think we can continue with everything next week.
Okay, so are you wanting to sign off then? Shall we quit it and end it? I'll continue if there's with other stuff afterwards. But let's finish this, and I'll do updates using video if I need to after this.
Okay.
For coming to class, I appreciate it. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. Bye, Rob.
Take care. Thanks, Bye.